said, let me start with a quick thing. So I'll introduce myself and we'll go over the table here and we'll touch on a couple of different things, your experiences and how did you land with this specific role now? And if you had any transition in the past from a non-technical role to a technical role or a tech role, it'll be a great story to hear. And part of it is because we want everyone to understand how we break into tech. And that's the whole concept, right? So I'll start with me and then we can jump on to the rest of the folks. I've moved, so my bachelor's was in electronics, and electronics meaning more of hardware, not software or technology. So when I was doing my bachelor's, I was all excited about building products. And then when at one point I realized building products is not just hardware. There needs to be software on top of hardware to even get it working. That's when I thought through and then, so how do I get into technology? And that's when I started to pursue my education into master's, and I did my master's from Texas A&M. Yeah, I came into Dallas. I was all excited when I came to States, and this was like 12 years ago. So once my master was done, and I kind of figured out how technology plays a key role, and that was my first flavor to technology. Technology plays a key role in any product across the world. I mean, it's not just one specific industry. Everywhere you have technology. So then I started with worked with multiple Fortune 500 companies like Citibank, Delta Airlines, and a couple of others, UHG, where I've worked on different products, meaning mobile products or mobile apps or web applications and whatnot. So as part of this journey, I was a business analyst. I was a software developer. I was a delivery lead. I was a scrum master. I was whatnot. I was everything during the whole SDLC cycle or software development life cycle. I've played most of the roles in that cycle. So it was exciting for me. Coming into Texas A&M was my first flavor of technology, and then since then I was a technology avid, and I've been that person, a technology consultant since then. I've been mentoring folks. I have a good background in business analysis, and so I help product owners and IT teams come together, be a bridge, and then deliver a product. So my most exciting part of this whole journey is I see a product from initiation to the end of the product, meaning delivery to the end customers or users, and get to know the user experience. So it is ups and downs, but it's all exciting. That's me. We'll jump on to who wants to go first. Laura?
Sure, I'll go first. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura. First of all, I want to thank Product South and all the organizers and really everyone that's connected online to this conference. I'm super excited to be here. I'm an iOS tech lead at DoorDash. And so DoorDash, as many of you might know, it's a logistics company. We offer food delivery from restaurants and grocery stores. Within the company, I focus on providing the best driver experience for drivers that are using our platform to complete these deliveries. So everything that, all the logistics end-to-end that start from the time that they are assigned an order to the time that they drop it off to the customer, that's sort of the experience that I live by. I have shipped a number of user-facing features just to sort of like give you an idea of like the work that I've been doing lately. I shipped a dark mode experience for the iOS driver app. I shipped some other experiences to try and make our drivers' lives like better and like more efficient as they complete these deliveries. And within DoorDash, I'm also a leader for women at one of our employee resource groups, as well as women in engineering. And so I focus there on like some mentoring experiences. I focus on recruiting underrepresented talent, and so on and so forth. Before DoorDash, I worked at Microsoft for about 5 years. I focused primarily as a full stack developer and tester for the Microsoft Sway app. It was a presentation tool that's part of the Office 365 family. And I also had some like time to dabble with like accessibility, being an accessibility like driver and tester for both the iOS and the web apps. I also didn't like start out with a CS degree. I started with a computer engineering degree from IIT in Chicago. At the time I was not really sure whether I wanted to go into more of like the software engineering or more like hardware engineering. I spent some time at Motorola trying to figure that out, and try to get a sense, trying to get a sense for like where my passion was. And when I decided to go into a more of a software role, I decided to get my master's degree in computer science from USC. Other than that, I'm originally from Uruguay. There's not a lot of Uruguayans in tech out there, so I'm super happy to be here representing. And yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I have some friends from USC, so great to know you from
Yeah,
USC.
nice.
All right. So who wants to go next? Marcellus?
Yeah, I'll go. So I am Marcellus Haynes. I am a software engineer, consultant, solutions architect. And much like Laura, I went to school for computer engineering and originally thought I would be doing on the hardware side, but somehow ended up doing software. So I've been doing software for about 20 or so years, mostly in web application development. And I've dabbled in all different languages, front end and back end. And right now I'm doing front end development on React. For a consulting company called Agile Thought. And so that's been pretty cool. And I also, about 8 years ago now, started an organization called the Technologists of Color. If you can see my, you can see my banner back there. And we advocate for Blacks in tech. And we do that through several programs, including happy hours, which are obviously networking events, meetups, and set working sessions where we collaborate to build code and work on code projects and things like that, as well as training sessions so that people can directly learn new skills and get prepared to get jobs in tech. And so that is the main thing that I do. That's my day and my night job. And I'm also a native of Atlanta. I always want to give a shout out to Atlanta.
All right, perfect. Go Atlanta.
Go Atlanta.
All right.
So it's kind of funny. That makes 3 computer engineers. I also graduated with a computer engineering degree. And for me, I would say my interest in technology really started with computers. I clearly remember in 4th grade, my teacher would he would build computers, and every so often he would bring it into class and kind of do a show and tell. And that really was the beginning of my interest in computers. Going to high school, I knew I wanted to do something with computers, but I never really knew like which path to take or what was the correct path. I just remember seeing a degree with computer engineering on the title. So I was like, all right, well, this has to do with computers, so I'm going to go with this. And I didn't really know what that entailed until I went to junior college and then transferred to university. And that's when I really started taking more of the core classes that I really started to see what that was about. But luckily, that was something that I really was intrigued and really passionate about. So it's something that I enjoyed. And graduated and I started working for Macy's Technologies in San Francisco. I started off as a production support engineer. So we would support the applications that were in productions. And the team that I worked with, we supported the internal applications, which are user-facing to other Macy's colleagues, the business owners that, so I did that for about 2.5 years, and then decided that I loved what I did. I loved the team, but it wasn't the career that I wanted to go on, career path I wanted to follow. So I made the transition to software engineering in 2015, and similar again, working on the internal platforms for Macy's, and was doing that up until 2020. Then there was a reorg that happened, and they ended up closing down the SF office and moved everything to Atlanta. And so right now I am unemployed, but I'm kind of going through another journey of like trying to do my own thing as a software engineering, try to do small consulting for small businesses focused on Latino consumer, Latino business owner. And that was my initial focus right before all of whatever happened is happening now happened. So I think right now it's a very intriguing time where small businesses are really struggling, to stay afloat. And one, websites is not really their focus, but how can I use my skill sets to really, even during this time, help them in whatever way that may be.
Very nice.
Fantastic. That's great. We have a diverse industry group here, so I'm excited. And for everyone who is watching this session, please feel free to post your questions. Meanwhile, we'll get into some of the questions I already have, and then we can jump into audience questions. All right, so first things first, I know because we all come from tech background and you guys are all software engineers, I'd want to know how does your, or what part of development or software engineering do you like, or what drove you there, first thing, and then what's so exciting about it when it comes to you as an individual? And Laura, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I can get us started. I think a lot of exciting things. I think for me, two things really stand out. One is the problem solving. I think that's sort of like my number one thing that I really like about development, just being able to sort of like sit down, understand the challenge, understand the problem, sit down like with our customers, with our consumers. I talk to our drivers quite a lot to try and understand like where the pain points are, and then just take that like sort of like that human experience and just think about like what can we code, how can we use software, and how can we use tech to try and like solve some of these issues, some of these pain points. And then that's where like sort of like the magic starts happening in terms of like analyzing different potential solutions, experimenting, seeing what solution is better, what solution works out best for end users. And then I think I really light up when we ship this feature, and then we just like go back and talk to our users, and we hear all this great feedback of like, yes, this is really working out. And sometimes it takes several tries. Most of the time, it does take several tries to get to a point where they're like, yeah, we're all good here. And so that sort of like short loop feedback iteration with our customers is something I really enjoy in my current job. It's extremely important to just be super close to the customer, especially being more on the mobile app side and the web app side. I think that's like a great place to just sort of like be to connect with your users and understand what they like and what they don't like. So yeah, I think that's what I enjoy the most for sure.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, if I can jump in, I'll definitely say my first thought was that I love the ability to create. It just software gives you just the power to build just about anything. And but then following up on what Laura said, the almost like euphoria you get from the hearing the response from people that have used things that you've built, like it is nothing else. There's nothing like it. And so I think those two things, as much as I've been developing for a long time, and over the past several years, I've become sort of weary of coding. But recently, I've started working on an app for our organization, and it sort of reinvigorated my spirit because I'm creating again. I'm building something new and something interesting and something that I know could be valuable to somebody. So it's that feeling is always is what I love most about development.
I would agree with both. I think for me, it's also solving those problems that others may have, and being able to contribute in that sense of building out that solution for them and seeing them use it. And even for me, like I remember just like as I work through the problems and as I develop like the functionality and I would test it out and like seeing, like certain I'm gonna start talking like geek, certain methods being called in back end and all this, and like getting an API response, like that's just like it gives me life. It just invigorates me, and like it's just like it gets me so excited. And it seems the whole aspect of that really is something that I'm really passionate about.
That's great. So problem solving, the high points I hear, problem solving, creating something to solve the problem, and communicating with the end customer to get their feedback. So in the end, you know that someone is happy of what you have done, right? That is great.
Absolutely.
That is great. So, on the same lines, maybe a sister question. So, how do you feel, or what is your opinion on interacting with the customer? So, in the software development lifecycle, software developers play a key role. However, getting the feedback from the customers or interacting with the customers, end customers, or users is I see minimal from a software developer or software engineer standpoint. So, what is your take on having that interaction? Would that really help, or would that deviate from what your day job is, or have more impact, negative impact?
Yeah, I'll say it definitely, we often don't have that enough, right? I think that's a big problem with development in that, and when it comes to developer morale, because if you never get a chance to sort of see the end result and see the effect of what you're building on the end user, one, you won't care enough about the quality of the code you're building, but two, you won't get that great feeling of, hey, the thing I'm doing is so is actually worth something to somebody. And so I think it's important that dev teams or companies that are building products somehow give the development team some exposure to the end user, so they can understand, hey, this is what we're doing this for. This is why this is so valuable.
And just even for me, I would say personally, that's something that I'm looking for, is to really be able to interact with the end user. And just from my experience, that's one insight that I realized that it's really valuable for me, because when I started off as a production support engineer, we weren't doing any real like high-end development. It was like basic generic fixes, but I would create some queries for the users directly and work with them. And for me, I found that so satisfying. When I moved over to development, it was a different interaction. Really, we didn't interact with the users directly. We interacted through a product or project manager that provided the requirements, and we would give it to them, and then they would sign off. But then when they would ship it to the customers wouldn't necessarily exactly, it wasn't what they really wanted from what we delivered. And kind of like Marcellus, like from me for a while doing that, I really started questioning like my passion for like programming and being a software engineer. I was like, is this something really what I want to do? Once I got laid off and I started working with small business owners, like I just felt that invigoration and I felt alive again. And that's what really made me realize this. I want to be able to have that interaction with the end user directly in some format, so that one, I can hear their pain points, and two, be able to see if what was done was something that actually addressed their issues.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all the stuff that's being said. I think just wanted to like add an example from my experience. Lately we've been working a lot with like drivers to try and provide them a better like navigation experience for when they complete our orders. And so we decided to do this in sort of like a beta driver format, which brings us even closer to our drivers. And so we just selected a number of drivers to test this new feature that we're trying out. And I think it's given us an amount of just feedback and just like a different way that we think about solving the problem. So a lot of the times when we're coding in our own computer. We're not out there doing deliveries. We're not out there working several hours on the road. And so we don't really, as developers, at least in this environment, we don't really get a lot of exposure to what our end user looks like, what our end drivers, how do they use the platform. And so it's crucial for us to have that sort of like just great like communication, great feedback with dashers. And so we've been testing this feature for some time, for about like a month or so. And the way that we've approached it is we just like ship a new iteration of the app, and then we collect a lot of feedback. We get on calls with drivers, which is great because there's no better way to get like information on whether something is working or not from them. And so and then based on their feedback, we sort of like plan out what are the next things that we're doing. And so it's been amazing. It's really been given us a completely different outlook on like how we think about our product, and it's yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. So human interactions is the key, and I think the feedback loop for any developer to bring back that feedback and then comprehend that and put back into your product is key for product success. I think that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So as Lily was mentioning during the beginning of this whole session, that there are so many undergrads, grads, and fresh grads that are joining the session. So maybe this question might help them a little bit. So from a development standpoint, software engineering, do you suggest mobile because mobile is the new cool and everyone has a mobile with them all the time, or web applications, or a combination of both? What do you guys suggest based on your experiences, and what are the tools that would help these guys who are viewing our session to thrive and learn, or what needs to be their learning approach for either mobile or web or both?
I think that's a great question. I haven't always been an iOS developer. Certainly not when I graduated college. I think it's crucial to just explore the like various paths and see really like what works for you, where your passion is, and it definitely takes some amount of iteration. Like I said before, I worked at Motorola for a little bit. I was sort of like half software, half hardware engineer, and that sort of exposed me to like, okay, do I want to go into software? Do I want to go into hardware? And then I decided that my passion lied more in the software environment. And then even within software, right, there's like so many different paths that you can take in terms of like back end, front end, mobile. There's like design technologists that are out there, and so I think the best way to sort of like try and like figure out where your passion is to try and different paths and see what works. It could be like courses that you can take online, courses that maybe you were able to take when you were an undergrad, or there's a lot of like online platforms, of course, to try the various areas, internships, apprenticeships, any way that you can sort of like get your feet wet with new technology, try it out, and see if that's something that you can that you are passionate about, and if not, then that's completely fine. That's perfect to sort of like get that like knowledge of like, this is not where I want to go. Let me switch back and try something else.
Perfect.
Right. So everything Laura said. And I would say, mobile right now is, of course, is huge. But I would caution folks to think that web is going out the door or anything like that. They're both really important. There's lots of opportunities in both areas. And I would say to just focus on one of them and get as much experience as you can. Like Laura said, learn as much as you can, build things, practice. This is one of the few professions that you can, from your home, in your home office or right on your bed, build something great, right? You can learn and do almost anything right in your home. And so it's really powerful. You just have to get in and go learn and go do it. But like Laura said, just get as much experience as you can and find out what works best for you, whether you like front end or back end or whatnot, what is most interesting and what you're best at, and just kind of go for it.
All right. Perfect. So all the grads, there you go, your answer. Start learning and then stick eventually once you know what you like, and stick to that one.
Or just start doing it. doing it. And like Laura said, iterate. You know, you can go down one path and decide, hey, I don't like this as much, or maybe I found an opportunity in this other area, then go that way. But then what's important is to just learn. Just go learn, practice, and do it. Just dive in.
Yep. All right. Perfect. So on an extension to what we've just said from fresh grads perspective. So do you have any specific languages or tools, or from a software engineering perspective, is there any go-to application that they need to learn to start transitioning, or to have a quick start into this industry, or especially in tech and software engineering?
Well,
I think. Oh, go ahead, Aarón.
Oh, sorry. So I think it was more. It's definitely if you're either in college and not really know what you want to do. Yeah, it's for me. My experience was always kind of like the back end side, where I remember using a lot of C, and then using like Java. I never really had any experience with like any of the front end technologies in college. So it was, for me, I kind of felt that was a path for me. And I was looking for roles that kind of were in that scope of more back-end systems engineering. And it doesn't mean that, you can't change that later on. But I think even just now, there's so many resources as a undergraduate that you don't really have to wait till be taught something in class. You can, if let's say, you are learning maybe systems engineering, but you want to learn more about front end, you don't have to wait to take a class for that. You can go online and take a class to just, like you said earlier, dabble on it and see if it's something you're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And there you have more options in terms of like which companies you want to apply. But in terms of like, I think the basics in terms of like front end development is like HTML, CSS, JavaScript. For back end, I think there is a lot more. There's more in what to choose there. I know there's like Node.js, there's Java. I know Java is more for like enterprise. So, and it also depends what you want to do. I feel that's kind of my opinion, and kind of just start playing around with different languages, and then just try and build something and see how you what you like, what you find it's easy to learn, and there you kind of see what path you might want to go on.
Yeah, I would also just say, don't necessarily get like too fixated on a specific language or a specific technology. I think that's something that's going to continue to evolve, continue to refresh. It's going to be different now than it's going to be like in the next 5 years, 10 years. And so I would say just focus a lot more on sort of the fundamentals of programming, the fundamentals of CS. How to problem solve, how to write some of those algorithms, and then a lot of the languages are very transferable. If you C++, you can certainly code in Java, and so there's a lot of the transitions that are very easy. I do see that Python is a super common language nowadays, just because there's a lot of libraries, and there's a lot of things that are that can be quickly coded in Python. So that would be a really I would say a really good starter language for just web and server. iOS and Android have their own languages. We have Swift, and we have on iOS we have Kotlin on Android. But yeah, I would say focus a lot more on just coding more generalist perspective, rather than necessarily having to know a specific language.
Yeah, and just again agreeing with Laura on in both actually. I wouldn't fixate, like you said, on any particular language. I would definitely make sure you have a grasp of the fundamentals. So at Technologists of Color, one of our programs is called TOC Foundations, and it focuses on workshops teaching those fundamentals, algorithms, data structures, actually interviewing techniques and agile development, things like that. those foundational concepts and ideas that you need to understand to be able to work in software in general. And then I think, like Aarón said earlier, just problem solving. Focus on problem solving and design thinking and things like that, because that's ultimately what's going to be most important. Can you figure out how to solve either a specific programming problem, or even at a high level, like a solution for a business or a company or a piece of functionality? So those are, I think, really important. There's just so many tools and platforms and languages that I wouldn't even know where to start outside of like VS Code or something. But I think, like I said, problem solving and those fundamentals are really key.
Perfect. So all the fresh grads, don't look for one specific language. Fundamentals and problem solving are the key. And thank you so much. This is really helpful, even for me. Breaking that idea of learning one language will take me somewhere, versus having the fundamentals is totally different, right? So people should come out of that bubble of one or two languages and then I'm set, versus continuous learning is what I suggest everyone, even during my mentor sessions.
No doubt.
Right. Perfect.
Absolutely.
All right. I'm seeing some of the questions that are popping up in the chat window. So one of the questions is, what's the biggest difference between front end and back end? Who wants to take it?
So I think, if you don't mind, the analogy that I heard that I think really describes it is, let's say you're building a house, right? And to build a house, you need to, obviously, there's like how it looks, there's what rooms you want to have, the color of the house, what kind of sink you want, and that's kind of what you could think of as front-end development, how everything looks. The back end will be more of like the pipes, the drainage system that connects everything and makes sure everything's flowing seamlessly, and there's no backups in the water or whatnot, and make sure that the hot water is running, and that's kind of more of the back end. So that's kind of a concept that I've heard describe them, and I kind of like that metaphor or kind of relationship. So that's kind of my take of the difference between front end and back end.
That's a great analogy. I mean, never thought about it, but yeah, pretty good. All right, so there is another question I did see that came through, is advantages and disadvantages of being a full stack developer.
I think just speaking from experience, I did start when I decided to go into more of a software engineering role. I did start as a full stack developer. I think the number one advantage of that was it exposed me to both the front end, the back end, and sort of like everything in between. It's just, it gave me a really good idea of like how software works in general. And then it also exposed me to like all the different technologies in both of these areas. And so it gave me like a really good idea of like whether I wanted to go more into a front end role versus a back end role. It's sort of like, I think that's the biggest advantage, at least for me in my experience, just like being able to sample the different domains to figure out where I wanted to go next. And I know that full stack roles are, there's a lot of them out there. I think it's like the biggest sort of like developer role in terms of like wearing different hats. I think in a lot of the startups, at least here in the Bay Area, that's kind of like what we're looking for a lot. It's just like someone that can like transition from like from just like writing some like UI code to like getting down into like the databases and how's the code under the hood. And so it's definitely a great role to have. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
I would say that, I've been a developer for a while now, and, once upon a time, full stack, it was a little easier, right? We didn't even call it full stack. Like we would work back end and front end and go back and forth pretty easily, because the front end wasn't as complex as it is now. And so in terms of a disadvantage, I would say that learning, trying to do both is much more difficult now because both sides are so complicated and there's so many different concerns when you think about one versus the other. When you're on the front end, you can do, there's front end logic and things that go on very similar to what you'll find in the back end, but you're also dealing with usability and UX and UI concerns that can, people have doctorates on that type of thing. There's a lot involved there. And on the back end, you have so many. It used to just be a database and a middleware, some Java or something like that. But now you have all these cloud services and APIs and things. It's just so difficult to be really good on both sides. People do it. Usually those people have a lot of experience and they've, kind of spent time becoming an expert in one and then moved over to the other and learned. But it's just, especially starting out, it's difficult to be really good at one. So I would say, just to concentrate on one or the other, at least initially, and figure out which one, appeals to you most and kind of go from there.
All right. That's perfect. And a few more questions popped up, so people are really excited. Great answers to all those questions, guys. The other question I see here is, what are your thoughts on boot camps and boot camp grads?
I'll get us started. We have a lot of boot camp grads at DoorDash. I think it's what makes a company really diverse in terms of their technical talent. A lot of our bootcamp grads had potentially different, careers, maybe in finance, some of them in accounting, and then they decided to move to a more technical role, and they completed a boot camp, and then now they're at a place like DoorDash and a bunch of other startups as well. I think it's certainly an amazing opportunity to jump into tech. There are a lot of boot camps out there that can give you the right skill set to prepare you well for a job in the industry. And I do see that a lot of companies are starting to hire more and more boot camp grads because they provide us a different perspective than someone with a traditional CS or computer engineering degree might have. Boot camp grad has experience in tech, but they also have experience in generally have experience in another topic that may or may not be related, right? And that relation between tech and finance is actually very important, for example, in trying to cost to some of the features that we develop. And so there's someone that can both develop a feature as well as try and have that sort of other knowledge of that this is how the business runs. That's really a really good something that can advance your career really, really quickly, having that other side knowledge as well.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think they're obviously really important right now in our industry because there's been a shortage for, I think, ever since the industry's been around in tech workers. And now more than ever, there are so many people coming into the industry. And so if that style of learning works well for you, it's certainly one of the best ways to jumpstart your career or to get into tech. Everybody doesn't learn the same. Some people can go and teach themselves, but boot camps are definitely a way. And in fact, we had an event earlier this week, and I had a conversation, did a quick interview with someone who literally within a year or so time went from no computer experience, no programming experience to a very well-paying job with a very well-known company. I won't put all her business out there, but literally within a year's time, she transformed her life, and it was absolutely incredible. And one of the ways she did that was through a boot camp. I mean, that was a part of her journey. So it certainly can help you to literally jumpstart your career and propel you into the tech industry.
And I think there are, and especially I think from my experience has been it is great. And I think sometimes certain companies, for Macy's, when we were hiring kind of more back-end engineers, then we would interview people from boot camps. we did feel that maybe they weren't as versed as someone with a traditional, um, traditional,
So that's
traditional background. But it's not to say that I think it's just depending on some roles may require more of a traditional background in terms of knowledge, or it just will be require that the person graduating from boot camp really, if not learn, if those concepts were not learned in the boot camp, really for them to take it on themselves to learn it. So I think at the end of the day is, do you know the concepts that maybe the specific company or the skills that the specific company is looking for? Do you have those? Regardless, especially now, it's more, we're seeing this regardless of where you come from, and regardless of like if you came with boot camp or not. Do you know these things to get your work done and to?
So Aarón, I must say that's precisely why we created the TOC Foundations program, to teach those foundational principles of algorithms, data structures. That's exactly why we did it.
Perfect. So quick shout out to all the good questions that are coming out. So Daniel, Jeffrey, Arabia, or McCoy, thank you so much. But in the interest of time, and you guys are doing a fantastic job, and that's the reason there's so many more questions coming in. But I'll have to conclude this session, but you guys can go into chat and respond to some of the questions. There is one interesting one that I would love to ask, but definitely, like I said, no time anymore. So drag and drop on SaaS startups. That's one question I would love to hear your answers. But before we conclude, what's your one final advice, or like Lydia was saying, a go-to line for aspiring software engineers or software developers or tech in general?
I would say, I'll get us started. I would say don't be afraid of failure, or don't be afraid of like going down a path as you get into tech, as you start your career. Don't be afraid to take a path, thinking, oh, maybe this is not going to be the one. Maybe this is I'm not going to be like good enough. Don't be afraid. Just get your toes wet. Get some experience in that field. And if that doesn't work, then that's perfectly fine. Just switch over to a different field. So just keep exploring. Finding your passion definitely takes more than one try. And so I highly encourage you to do that.
Perfect.
I would say, like, just one thing to remember, and one thing that we said at Macy's Live, you are the driver of your career. Don't expect a company to kind of like cater to your needs. Like you need to cater to your needs, and you need to figure out what is best for you and make those correct decisions. Kind of the example for me is when I started off as a production support engineer. I loved it, but I realized that it wasn't something that I wanted to do. Macy's didn't come and say, "Hey, do you want to switch roles or whatnot?" It was I had to take it on myself to be proactive and make that change. So just always remember, you are the driver of your career, and make sure that you're mindful of that, and you're always in that driver's seat.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah, gosh, like both of those are outstanding. I mean, don't be afraid. That I think is almost better than what I was going to say. But I'll just say, do what makes you happy. Do what makes you happy, and what you like, what makes you most comfortable, and try to be really good at that.
Awesome. So be happy, or look for what makes you happy, and don't be afraid of failure. I think those are the key takeaways. We want to make sure every grad or anyone who wants to jump into tech, not just grads, but anyone who wants to transition or break into tech, that's what you want to do. That's what you want to do. And with that being said, you guys were fantastic. Thank you so much.